Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Barely, okay. This better? Okay. So welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service. I'm Steve Wicks. I'm honored to serve as your president this year. We've had some technical difficulties, but hopefully we have them solved. Big program for today. First part of today's program is highlighted by Yolanda Trevino's reflection of her year as club president. We'll also be treated to some Paul Harris Awards, during which we'll honor several club members who have reached milestones with their generous donations to Rotary International. Finally, our guest speaker, Mike Diekhoff, will open our eyes to the world of hot air ballooning. Please silence your electronic devices. In terms of the day of history, on this day in 1893, Catherine Lee Bates wrote America the Beautiful in Colorado. And we were treated to a beautiful rendition of this song 3 weeks ago by club members Sally Gaskell, Amy Asajima, and Connie Shakalis. And now Yolanda will share today's reflection.
Thank you. So 2008, okay, here we go. 2008-2009 was a year marked by significant global events. Panic of 2008, financial crisis stemmed from excessive speculation on housing. Summer Olympics were held in Beijing. Natural disasters such as the cyclone in Myanmar and the earthquake in China, and the spread of the H1N1 pandemic, what we know as the swine flu. Advancements also included the first Android phone being released. The Hadron Collider began operation, and the U.S. elected its first African-American president. My year as president of the Bloomington Rotary Club began by attending the International Convention in Los Angeles, California. There, the Rotary International theme was announced. It was chosen by RI President Don Keung Lee, and it was Make Dreams Real. This theme emphasized action and encouraged Rotarians to focus on projects that address critical issues like child mortality through initiatives related to water, health, hunger, and literacy. One of the dreams that RI President Don Keung Lee most wanted to turn into reality was a longer and healthier life for the world's children. He cited the disturbing statistic that 26,000 children under the age of 5 die every day from preventable causes. Lee urged Rotarians to use the 2008-2009 service emphasis of water, health, and hunger and literacy to give children a chance at a better future. Here at home, Rotarians, we embraced the SMART framework. We held a strategic planning retreat for our club leadership. We set goals that were specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We hosted ambassadorial scholars and submitted applications to the district. Not only did we give to Rotary, but through Rotary. In addition to supporting the Polio Plus campaign, we worked on projects related to water and Teachers Warehouse. And we adopted technology. We used the new web tool, SurveyMonkey, to poll our members, collecting their responses quicker and more affordably. We no longer needed to print, purchase envelopes, or stamps. And all this was free. Today, as it was back in 2008 and 2009, Rotary's most powerful asset has always been you, our club members. Our strength comes from the strategic and impactful use of our individual and collective talent, our treasure, our time, and our testimony. The Rotary family also includes Peace Fellows, Rotaractors, Interactors, and those who participate in our programs, such as high schoolers who attend RILA, which is our Rotary Youth Leadership Awards program, Youth exchangers, which are high schoolers who come and live in the U.S. for a year, and U.S. students, high schoolers that live in another country in the homes of Rotarians. And something that's new, the Rotary Community Corps. These are members who are non-Rotarians who share our commitment to changing the world through service projects. This is what Rotary is: good people who give of themselves, ourselves, for the greater good. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. We are Rotary.
Thank you, Yolanda. Peggy Frisbee will introduce our guests today.
Good afternoon. We have several guests with us today. First of all, and when I say your name, if you would, stand up so that we can recognize you. First of all, we have Bill Oliver, a guest of Mike Baker. We have Peyton Flynn, who is a guest of the club. And Peyton is an almost attorney working through law school. Donna Lafferty, guest of the club, and Donna is with the Bloomington Symphony Orchestra. Lisa Miller, guest of Alan, who works with career development and music. The next one I need a little help with, Natasha. Thank you. A guest of Alan. And Scott Bergens, guest of Andrea Murray, who is with SPIA, I think. Okay, thank you. And do we have any guests online?
Hi, Peggy. We have no guests. We are just Rotarians, Rotarians, Rotarians.
All right. So thank you for coming, our guest today. And if you'd like to know more about Rotary, please ask whoever came with, or anyone at your table, or anyone else. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. I want to add that as a club, each quarter, in honor of our speakers each week, we designate a charity of the quarter. And the charity of the quarter for last quarter was the Bloomington Symphony Orchestra. And we asked Donna Lafferty to join us here today. And we're thankful she's joined us, and we'll give her check at the end of the meeting. Okay, we have several Rotary birthdays. Dick McCaig celebrates a birthday on the 25th. Scott Walters on the 26th. And Tyler Martin Nichols there in the corner, who's been working furiously this morning, also has a birthday on the 26th. One anniversary to celebrate. Connie Shakalis will celebrate her 5th anniversary as a club member on the 28th. Multiple announcements. First of all, we mourn the death of legendary sports writer Bob Hamill, who was our Rotary Toast recipient in 2020. While we're on the subject of the Rotary Toast, don't forget to buy your tickets for this year's Rotary Toast, Friday, November 7th. You can go to Rotary.com to get your tickets. Also, I think if you see Natalie, she can arrange to have you billed through the club invoicing system. Save the date for the club holiday party, December 11th at the Bloomington Country Club. We've made a lot of headway concerning our need for roundabout reporters. We still have a few openings. Please see Marilyn Wood if you can help. The Peace Building Committee will meet here immediately after this meeting. All are welcome. Check it out if you'd like to learn more. If you haven't done so already, please sign up for this Friday's community service project at Hoosier Hills Food Bank. You can sign up on Sign Up Genius, or you can see Natalie, or Dave Meyer is sitting there in the purple shirt, and you can see Dave. Rotary Book Club, 23rd, home of Sally Gaskell. If you'd like to know more, Sally is sitting at one of the back tables. We received a thank you letter for Ivy Tech. The club donated $3,000 to Ivy Tech for scholarships this spring, and we have a very nice letter from Ivy Tech thanking us for that donation. Okay, I think we're ready to roll into Paul Harris presentations.
Afternoon, Rotarian guests. Many of you know that past President Tracy gave me this crocodile to remind me, tick-tock Peter Pan, to keep track of my time. So is Tracy here today? Good. Hey, sorry, Steve. How about some rain jokes? We tired of rain yet? Okay, this is great. Is there somebody from the School of Music that could maybe answer this? Who's the first orchestra member hit by lightning? The conductor. Maybe I should quit there. Okay, what do you call it when it starts to rain ducks and chickens? Seriously foul weather. Okay, seriously, I better move on. I was told by a friend of mine that our speaker today, most of his speech is going to be full of hot air, so I'm looking forward to that. But today, we're going to move on to 2 Paul Harris Fellow recognitions. 2 members will be receiving a Paul Harris today. The first is Tim Thrasher, and the second is Forrest Gilmore. Would you please join me up here? Forrest, Tim? Most of you know the Paul Harris Fellow recognition is for a club member who supports Rotary International and all the good works it does. Also for those individuals in our club who have done outstanding community work in Bloomington, or as we say, service above self. Tim Thrasher, he's been supporting Rotary Club since just after the Civil War, or one of the wars anyway, and he'll be receiving his Paul Harris Fellow +3 pin today. Forever treasurer, then comptroller of Monroe County School Corporation, and eventually director of business there when he retired in 1990. Steady supporter of our club, quiet, does a lot of work behind the scenes. I understand he's an avid fisherman, maybe going to get out on the lake this evening. And his reputation, in talking with someone who worked with him, is being fair, honest, consistent, and patient. We could use a lot more people like that in the world. Next, we have Paul Harris Fellow, a new Paul Harris Fellow, Reverend Forrest Gilmore. He's been a new member in our club since 2023. He's executive director of the Shalom Center and executive director of Beacon. He's a graduate of Cornell University and Starr King School of Ministry. Most of you know the work that Shalom and Beacon does in our community to empower people in need. He's a tireless advocate for the homeless and poor in our community. Beacon's Light the Way campaign is a very ambitious project to build 25 permanent homes, 20 apartments, and some work exchange apartments for people that work at Beacon. Because of his compassion and work in the community, our club is honoring Forrest with the Paul Harris Fellow. One of the board members of Beacon told me Forrest is compassionate to a fault and with seemingly endless supply of energy. So please rise and join me welcoming our 2 newest, or one of them is our newest Paul Harris Fellow member. I'm going to give this to you. And Rebecca, if you could pin, and Tim, I'll take care of you. The 2 of you will go 1, 2, 3. 3, 4. Yeah. Here we go. Ready and done. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, real quick. Well, forget it. We got this.
So I'm going to tell a joke. It's an old one, so if you've already heard it, stay quiet. What did the Lone Ranger say on the way to the dump? To the dump, to the dump, to the dump, 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 to the dump, to the. Oh, gee.
Thank you, Mike and Rebecca. Charlotte Zitlow will introduce today's speaker.
Thank you. I'm very proud today to introduce our speaker. Uh, What's his name? Mike Diekhoff, who is the chief of police, as we know in Bloomington, but forget that for now, because he does something very interesting beyond and probably behind and above that. I saw on WTIU a few years ago, a program about creating the balloons that fly over the wind, and finding out that Mike Diekhoff owns a business that creates these balloons. And see, Mike Diekhoff was a classmate of my son's, so I'm older than he is. But this is adding to his daily routine with the Bloomington Police Department, where you've been for how many years? Yeah, and he can't remember any better than I can. We forget our time. Anyway, I'm very glad today to introduce Mike Diekhoff, who is now the owner of the business that floats the balloons over our city and our county. And welcome today. Thank you.
Does anybody? It's playing? Okay. Do I have to stand behind this? Because I like to walk, but there's a camera. I'll stay here. So my name is Mike Diekhoff. Many of you know me probably from my day job as the police chief, but we're not going to talk about that because that's not nearly as fun as what my hobby that turned into a business is. So growing up, there was a guy that lived in the same neighborhood as me that flew hot air balloons, and his name was Bill Oliver. And so I was fascinated by this and would periodically follow him around. And one day I got a ride. Bill took me up in his balloon. Fast forward probably 30 years later, I met another guy because I had been kicking around the idea of trying to get my pilot's license and discussing that with my wife, who kept saying, well, when our daughter gets out of high school, we'll talk about it. When she gets out of college, well, all that had happened. So she finally faced the reality that I was serious about this. And so I met a guy that sold me a used balloon. And ironically, it was actually the same type of balloon that Bill had given me a ride in all those years earlier. And he taught me how to fly. I did a lot of my flight training in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is kind of the known as the balloon capital of the world. They have a lot of big balloon events out there, especially one in October. And so took me about 2 years to get my license. I got my license, came back to Bloomington. The guy that taught me how to fly, he moved back to Bloomington, so I flew with him a lot. Flew with Bill. There's about 5 or 6 balloon pilots in Bloomington. So usually when one flies, they let others know, and sometimes they join. And so finally worked up, and I got my commercial license. If you have a commercial license, that allows you to sell rides and take paying passengers. And so Andy Richardson was the guy that taught me how to fly. He had a ride business. I started flying for him. And then just was getting a lot of hours flying balloons, having a great time. So then a couple years later, I acquired the business. from Andy. Andy passed away and I took over the ride business. But Andy also had a manufacturing business called Adams Balloons. And me and a couple of other guys bought that business from his family. We continue to operate that at the Monroe County Airport. We also have another side business where we repair balloons too. The repair station and the manufacturing are all certified by the FAA. And so we do a lot of repairs on balloons in our area in central Indiana, and also starting to make balloons more frequently too. So I'm going to talk more about the ride business though today, because that's what's more fun. What's playing on the screen is a video that we play every time we have passengers that show up. And it's got safety instructions built in there, but there's a lot of pictures of different balloon rides that we have done over Bloomington and Monroe County. So we fly anytime the weather is good, which hasn't been so great this year. But if the weather is good, the winds are good, we will go fly balloons. And so I average probably flying 75 to 80 balloon flights a year, which is a lot. Bill now also helps me out when I need more pilots. Bill will fly for me as well. I am nowhere as good a pilot as Bill is. Bill's a much better pilot than I am. But it's always a learning experience. So you learn every time you fly. So we fly basically in Monroe County. We do morning flights and we do evening flights. I personally prefer evening flights because it's too wet in the morning with the dew, and the balloons get wet, and it just ends up, I just don't care for it. But I'll fly in the mornings as well. And so, but we'll fly anytime the weather is good when we have passengers that want to go for a ride. My business is called Balloons Over Bloomington. We have 8 different balloons of different sizes that we fly. We have 5 corporate balloons and 3 non-corporate balloons. And when I talk about corporate balloons, that is a business that has bought a balloon that we fly on our ride business. So we have South Central Indiana Kiwanis Club is one of our balloons that we fly. We fly the IU Credit Union balloon. We fly RCV Roofing balloon. Our newest balloon is Pizza X. So we made it to look like a tomato. So unfortunately, I do not have a picture of that one because it's so new. But we will fly those corporate balloons in the ride business. So it's a good deal for the business because we'll fly those balloons 20 times a year or more. And so they get the advertising every time we fly. What I am finding out is the Pizza X balloon is becoming a favorite because when I fly over neighborhoods and things like that, people will yell out, "I love Pizza X." So Jeff Meese is very happy about that because he's the one that bought that balloon. So anyway, you'll see we have different sizes of balloons. We can take as little as 2 people up with a pilot and as many as 8 people. And so when we do those flights, everything is based upon the wind. So if the wind is blowing in a certain direction, we probably have a launch location that we can take off from. And so we've built into our rides, there's probably 6 or 8 different locations around Monroe County that we take off from. And again, it's all based on the wind. When you do a flight and you start planning for a flight, one of the things that you want to look at is landing locations, because people always ask, can you steer a balloon? Well, you can a little bit based on the winds, but it's not like if I'm going this way and I want to turn left that I can do that. In an airplane, you can. In a balloon, you cannot. And so you play the altitude game when you find the wind blowing in the direction that you want it to go, and that's kind of how you can steer a balloon. A lot of people are afraid of heights, and when they ask me about going on a balloon ride, what I always tell them is don't look down, look out. I myself am not one that goes really high in a balloon. Legally, we can go up to 17,999 feet. Again, I will not do that. I know Bill loves to go up that high. So that's the flying range. We still have to abide by all of the FAA regulations and airspace regulations. So We're constantly keeping in contact with the airport tower here in Monroe County so that they know where we're at. So yeah, so those are some of the things about flights. So when we start to plan for a flight, as I said, we look at weather a lot. The wind is something that is extremely important. You can have winds that are too fast and you can have winds that are too slow. There's nothing worse than flying along and the wind stops and you're stuck over a wooded area because you can't land. So when we start planning a flight, we'll look at weather forecasts. We look at the wind direction, the wind speed, and then we pick a launch location. And all of my launch locations, with the way that they're set up and the direction of the wind, there are always usually ample landing spots when you take off. So that's what you want to make sure you have is a good landing spot, because if you don't, you can keep flying and eventually you will run out of fuel, which is not a good thing, because you think about a balloon floating in the sky, well, they can also drop out of the sky too. So having those weather forecasts and planning those flights is extremely important, because the first thing is safety of everyone involved in the flight. So we do a lot of weather planning, and I'm constantly looking at my phone, looking at the weather. My wife has gotten into it as well, and now she will say, "Oh, it looks like it might be too windy tonight." So she's already picked up on watching the weather as well. So anyway, when we do the flights, we do all the pre-flight checks. We get the balloon out, load it up. We have all of our stuff on trailers. We'll drive to our launch location. We'll get the balloon out. We let passengers help inflate. They'll hold the mouth of the balloon open. We cold inflate it first. We have big fans that pack them full of cold air so that they just fill up laying on the side on the ground. Then we put hot air into it. So we'll heat that up. So I carry anywhere from 50 to 60 gallons of propane in the basket with me. And so that is usually enough that probably would allow us to fly for about 2.5 hours. I've never flown that long. The longest I have flown has probably been about an hour and a half. But you want to make sure you always have ample fuel, and we plan that so that we always do. So once we get the balloon stood up, filled up with hot air, we get the passengers in, then we take off. And so we'll fly until we start looking, about an hour or is how long our flights are. And we will fly, and then we'll start looking for landing locations. And so that can sometimes become tricky. And I don't usually like to talk about this, but being the police chief has helped when I've landed on people's property and they get really angry because they threaten to call the police sometimes, which I'm like, you don't really need to do that. It'll be all right. And I have had people call the police on me, and it's always kind of different when they show up and they're going, "Hi, Mike." And so it's worked out. There are some people that don't like balloons. We try not to land on private property. We usually try to find public property to land on, but sometimes we do. Some people are really happy to have a balloon land in their yard because it's a novelty. How many of you have ever had a balloon land in your yard? Very few. So most people see them floating in the sky and think that these are really neat and really pretty to watch. They're really fun to ride. And how many of you have been on a balloon ride? Okay, several of you. That's good. That's good. It's just a really enjoyable, kind of peaceful thing to do. That's kind of how I got into it. As I was, my day job can be very stressful. I'm like, what kind of hobby can I engage in that is kind of relaxing? So I thought, how about ballooning? My wife disagrees with that. She goes, "Why did you pick two stressful things to get involved in?" But I did. And most of the time, I find it to be a lot of fun, very relaxing. And just, I get to share that experience with people who've never been up in a balloon before. I've never had anybody walk away saying, "I hated that. I'll never do that again." I've had a lot of people that have been terrified, and they'll tell me, "I'm glad I did it. I won't do it again, but I'm really glad I did it once." And so it's just a unique experience to be floating over the countryside. People frequently ask, can you hear people talking? Yes, you can. You can be several hundred feet off the ground and you can hear people talking to you. Vice versa, you have to be careful what you're saying too, because they can hear you as well. I have found that dogs are big fans of hot air balloons. You fly over and they're always barking at you. And cattle and horses are not. So we're really cautious when we fly over farm areas where there are livestock, because we understand that the noise from the burners can scare the animals. So we tend to go really high over those fields and use quiet. There's a quieter setting on the burner to use, so you don't disturb the animals. So anyway, so when we're flying, when we land, we get the balloon packed up, we go back, and then we go back to our hangar. Different pilots do it differently, but then we do a celebratory toast. And so I usually tell a story. Does anybody know when hot air ballooning actually kind of started? So the year was 1783. There were two brothers with the last name of Montgolfier, and they were paper makers for the king. They would make paper during the day, and at night they would go out back and burn the scraps of that paper. And when they did that, they noticed that the embers would rise up in the air, and they thought, I wonder if there's a way for us to capture that energy and maybe make man fly. So they started experimenting where they made different sizes of bags that would become balloons. Finally made one big enough, they thought this will carry a person. So they go back to the king, they tell the king what they wanted to do, and the king said, no, you have to scientifically test this theory first. So the scientific test consisted of taking a goat, a chicken, and a duck. A goat, because if it landed outside the rolling hills of Paris, they found the goat alive. They knew that the sun didn't melt it, and there was enough oxygen, and more than likely man would survive. The duck is in case they landed in the water, ducks float. They thought, well, if they find the duck alive, they know the sun didn't melt it, enough oxygen. Again, more than likely man would survive. Chicken is land-based, so they thought if they're flying along and the basket would capsize and the animals would fall out, the chicken would glide back to earth, and if they found it alive, same thing, didn't melt, enough oxygen. So they go back, they tell the king what happened. The king said, he gave his blessing, got everybody downtown Paris, filled the balloon up, put the animals in, cut the rope, and off it sailed. Well, it's 1783, so they really don't know much about the weather and wind. Plus, they didn't have the modern conveniences of a vehicle to chase and pick the balloon up, so they had to go on horseback. So by the time they finally landed, or finally caught up to the balloon, it had landed in a farmer's field. The farmer was there with his farmer buddies, tending to the crops with their pitchforks. They see this billowing black smoke descending from the heavens. It has to be a bad omen from God. So they take their pitchforks and they destroy the balloon. So the Montgolfier brothers go back. They tell the king what happened. The king said, I declare from this day forward, you shall always carry a bottle of France's finest champagne and offer it as a peace offering to the landowner. Well, we take that bottle, and usually we don't have a landowner, so we celebrate our flight with a toast, celebratory toast that we made a successful flight, safe return to Earth. I don't use champagne, I use grape juice, just because of my day job. I'm not going to give somebody alcohol and say, here you go drive home. And so then we're finished with our flight. People are pretty happy about things. We usually take pictures on the flight. We post them on our Facebook page and on our website. And then we start the day over again. So any questions? Yes. Okay.
Here we go. I think we're ready. So I wondered about working, you said you worked with the airport. Do you have to file a flight plan or anything like that?
So we have to operate within the airspace, and if we're in the airspace of the Monroe County Airport, it's a 5-mile radius around the airport. So if we're in their airspace, we have to communicate with them via a radio. So all the local pilots carry aircraft radios, and we monitor the airport frequency. And if we enter into their airspace, we have to let them know. I frequently will take off at the airport, so I have to get clearance from the tower. So if I'm going to take off at the airport, I call on the radio, telling them my in number and that I'm ready to take off from wherever I'm at, and then they give me approval to do that. We don't really file a flight plan with them. We don't have near the instruments that an airplane has, so they can't really track us. Whereas an airplane emits a beacon and they can track that. We just stay in radio contact with them.
when a balloon goes over the middle of the town, about how high is it? And if a balloon lands in Bryant Park, has something gone wrong?
So if a balloon lands in Bryant Park, no, nothing necessarily has gone wrong. It's a big open area in the middle of the city. So there are regulations on populated areas. You're supposed to be 1,000 feet above. In rural areas, it's 500 feet. Unless you're coming into land, then, obviously you can't be at 1,000 feet and just drop into the landing site. So
If you have a tear in the fabric, how do you patch it? Is it a patch put on with glue, sewn, or both?
So it depends on how big it is. What you have to do is you have to look at the manufacturer's recommendations on how to fix it. And they tell you if it's I don't know all the regulations for each manufacturer, but if it's like a small, maybe half-inch tear, you could put a sticky patch on it. So you can get patches that have adhesive back, or you can actually glue them on. If it's a larger tear, you sew a patch over it.
We have a question online.
Yeah, Mike, in 2015, Rotary was looking for a fundraiser, a signature event. And we came, in my opinion, within 1 week of having the balloon festival. I think it was Logansport, Indiana. They had it and they wanted to give it up. And when we eventually got around to talking to them, they said Kiwanis beat you out by a week. South Central Kiwanis Club. I have heard from some Kiwanians off the record and some others that there were some years when they thought that taking on the balloon festival may have been a curse rather than a blessing because of weather. Just not asking you to divulge any of the secrets of your partner there, Kiwanis, but has it been a good thing on balance? And are they, as far as you know, committed to keeping the festival in September?
So I don't really have anything to do with planning that festival. I just have their balloon and I will fly it. I do know that weather has impacted it several times. I think last year it was completely canceled because, we're landlocked, but we still get the effects of hurricanes. And so it's usually in the fall, which is when you have, late summer, early fall, you start to have more hurricane activity. So we get those, and they have been canceled before. But I think that, balloon festivals can be really good for communities. They bring a lot of people to an area. So again, I'm not really involved in that festival, so I don't know logistically, if they make money at it or how well they do. I know that it's usually pretty well attended. So
We have a question online from Sandy.
Yes, Sandy, go ahead.
Okay, hi, Mike. Sandy Keller here. Your friend Ben Keller wants to know how much the temperature goes up or down when you're going in the balloon.
So in the summertime, you don't really notice it because I don't go up that high, but you usually lose about 2 degrees per 1,000 feet. So it's not real noticeable when you're in that, ground level to 3,000-4,000 feet level. But if you start getting up high around, 16,000, 17,000 feet, you probably would notice a several degree difference in the temperature.
Okay, I have two easy questions. One is, do you carry any kind of device that allows you to be seen on airport radar?
No.
Okay, so you are essentially invisible to.
Well, they're pretty big in the sky, and I've listened to the radio enough because the tower will usually tell airplanes that are coming into land, and if we're in the airspace where we're at. And most of the time the pilots go, yeah, I see them.
Yeah, and you're flying in good weather, so
yes,
that helps.
And we can't fly in clouds or anything like that, so.
Okay. My other easy question is about the materials that the balloon is made from. Can you explain a little bit about what they're made of?
Yeah, so hot air balloons are made out of ripstop nylon. And so there's different weights of that material, but when we make a balloon, We basically design it for the customer. We'll send them renderings and they'll approve those, and then we print out cut sheets. So all of the fabric comes on, it's like 5-foot wide rolls, and we pull it out, and we have patterns that we lay on top of the fabric and cut it out. And then we number each panel that is cut out. And then those panels are sewn together to make what is called a gore. And so the balloon gets its shape because each one of those panels is a little bit wider as it goes up. And so that makes the balloon shape. And so when all those gores are finished, then we sew the gores together. And on those seams, we sew load tapes, because it's the load tape that actually carries the weight of the balloon. And those load tapes start with the basket. They're hooked to the basket. The cables from the basket go to the bottom of the basket and are secured. Then it goes up around the balloon, and then the load tapes are secured at the very top of the balloon. So you have kind of this cage of load tapes that holds the nylon fabric together and in, which is what holds the hot air and gives you the lift.
I would love to hear kind of a memorable moment from observing your passengers, maybe somebody who overcame their fear mid-flight, or a surprise proposal, that sort of thing.
So I have had many people who have been afraid of heights, and you can tell because they will not move. They will stand in the basket, and they have a death grip on the edges of the basket. It usually takes them about 15 minutes to get used to the feeling of being off the ground. And a balloon most of the time, it's a very smooth ride. It's not like an airplane when you're flying and you hit turbulence and it shakes. That usually doesn't happen in a balloon. And so once they get comfortable with that feeling, they get a little bit better. They still maintain that death grip, but they'll move around a little bit. And when I know someone is uncomfortable like that, I try to talk to them more to kind of divert their attention so that they're not totally freaked out that they're 1,000 feet off the ground in a hot air balloon. I get a lot of proposals. I've never had anybody say no. I know pilots who have had people. Have you ever had anybody say no? Yeah, it makes for a really uncomfortable flight, because as the pilot, you're like, okay, what do we do now? I've had a couple people that have gotten overheated in the balloon. It's been 90 degrees out and you've got this big flame above your head. And so usually what I have them do is they'll kind of kneel down so they get a little bit farther away from the heat. I had one couple, the wife had we give water bottles to people when they're flying, and she dumped the water bottle on his head to cool him down, which seemed to work. I had one woman who was pregnant, and she got nauseous and threw up over the edge of the basket. And I was going to land because I thought, okay, we got to land. And so I started to come down, and she goes like, no, I want to keep flying. So she must have been okay. So, but yeah, those are probably, that's the only issues I've ever had with passengers.
So we have another question online.
Yes, so Jimmy Torrey asked the question, how long does it take to make a balloon?
So we can usually make a balloon in about 3 to 4 weeks if we spend full time on it. There's, like I said, there's a lot of prep work going into the design of it, because we will print out paper patterns. So once we get all the fabric ordered, we can pull out lots of fabric at one time. We have a big cutting table, so it's pulled out. We put the patterns on top of it, and we can cut them all out at one time. When we make something like that, it goes quickly. We just recently, about 2 months ago, did it was a custom shaped balloon. It looked like a Fabergé egg, and it was totally printed. So we took white fabric and ran it through a huge inkjet printer and printed this elaborate, it literally was like a Fabergé egg. It had a peacock on it. That took a long time because every panel was custom printed. Every panel had to be individually cut out. So if we're doing like just a multicolored balloon, if it's like, you know, red, white, and blue, we'll pull out all the red fabric and cut them all out at the same time. But on a printed balloon, because each one is individually printed, it has to be cut out individually. So that one took a lot longer to make. But on average, if it's just a normal balloon, even the corporate balloons, we can print the logos on the fabric itself and just cut it out. So it takes us 3 to 4 weeks usually. Charlotte? Okay.
Is it significantly more difficult to fly on a very cold day versus a very warm day?
No, actually, the balloons perform much better when it's colder because there's the air is lighter. It's not as heavy as in the summer. So a lot of people don't want to go fly in the winter. Winter flight's really neat, but they don't want to go because it's cold. And I tell people, look, we got this big fire above our head, so it's not that cold. The coolest flight I think I ever did was a couple of years ago. We did a night flight. And so you have to have lights on the balloon, but we flew across a farm field. It was February, there was snow on the ground, and there was a full moon. So it was pretty light. And every time you would burn, the ground would just light up. So that was probably the coolest flight I've ever done.
I have a question.
Yes.
Excuse me. I know you can't predict it, but do you have any guesses as to whether we'll be seeing some balloons? One of the nicest things I remember in my life was driving down 37 North and coming down to the intersection, going up to old 37, and there's a big field there, still is. And it was very foggy, and all of a sudden, out of that fog rose about 10 balloons. It was absolutely magical. So it's even taking off is exciting. But do you have any guesses at all when we might see that?
Well, I'm supposed to fly tonight, so I'm not quite sure. I'm looking at probably taking off from the east side of Bloomington, and then probably be around 7 o'clock. Fog is usually in the morning, and so technically we're not supposed to fly in fog because you can't see the balloon. And so I don't know when that would ever be recreated again. Not saying that it wouldn't happen, but it's not the best way to fly. So
Thanks, Mike. Following up on that, do you fly all months of the year? And my other question is, since you don't know where you're going to land when you take off, how do you get back to your landing place?
So we can fly all months of the year. Like I said, most people don't want to fly in the winter. The problem is like in the snow, if the balloon gets packed, when you're packing it up, if it gets snow in it, it melts, and you don't want to get the fabric wet because that just degrades the fabric and it can mildew. But you certainly can. There are a lot of people that fly in the winter. We don't do it a lot around here. So. So when most of the pilots here fly, they have a chase crew. And so I send a GPS track to my chase crew so they can look at their app and see where I'm at. Plus we maintain radio contact with our crew as well. So a lot of times we'll be low and they won't see us. And so they'll either call us on the radio and say, "Hey, where are you?" Or they'll track us with the GPS track. And 9 times out of 10, my crew is usually there when I land. So.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned that the fuel will run out, right? And so how long does it last? And has it ever run out on you?
I have never ran out of fuel. I know pilots that have gotten, Bill's never run out either. I know pilots who have gotten really, really low. And so when you're out of fuel, I mean, that's not a good thing.
Does it go down fast or slow, or
it can, yes,
die?
it can go down really fast. Because you know, if you think about it, the balloon, the total weight, fully with passenger, you're looking at probably 1,300 pounds. And it's hot air, the buoyancy of the hot air keeping it in the air. And when it gets cold, it's just going to start to drop. And when we want to come down, we have vents in the balloon, but usually you just let it cool off and then you start to descend. Well, if it keeps cooling off, you're going to just descend even faster. So. Good. Okay. I brought some cards. I'll leave over here if anybody wants more information.
Mike, if you can stick around afterwards, we still had a couple of club members who have questions. So I think seeing a balloon is a really uplifting experience. I've never had one land on my property, but really very interesting and informative. And thank you. In honor of your presentation, a donation will be made this corner to Off Night Productions. I'd like to thank the club members who volunteered to help with today's program: Vivian Bridges, Peggy Frisbee, Charlotte Zitlow, Joy Harder, Yolanda Trevino, Jim Bright, Alan Barker doing double duty. Our next meeting will be July 29th in the Georgian Room. Our speaker will be John Connell, whose topic is Transforming Bloomington Transit. So Tyler, if you could share the graphic for the four-way test, and please stand if you're able. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun?